movies in Math 3. So I know that everyone now are very energized while watching me. So may I see your happy faces? Okay, so that's the spirit of being a fighter. So laban ra jud tano basin og naaning COVID. So kaya ra jud ni nato mahuman ra jud ning panahon na. Laban, laban, laban. Fight, fight, fight lang. And now, I am tasked to discuss about on how to write a speech. So, future educators, kindly bear with me because in our degree profession, we could use this as our assets in delivering our speech. As what I have researched, when you write a speech, you must first remember the speech sandwich. So, what is this speech sandwich? How is this related in writing a speech? So now, let us discover how this speech sandwich helps us in delivering and making our speech. Try to look the picture. That is the speech sandwich. It has an attention grabber, the content, and the close. If you think that your speech is a sandwich, you get an idea, right? So the opening and the ending of the sandwich are the slices of bread. It is like the attention grabber and the close of your speech. In the middle was the filling of the sandwich, which holds by the slices of bread. So it is like the content of your speech, that content that gets or grab more attention to your audience. You can build yourself a simple sandwich with filling, or you can go gourmet or add 3 or even 5. It's your choice. It is like in writing a speech. It's your choice in how to write it in order to make it more appealing to your audience. And then future educators, if you write a speech, always remember the speech evaluation rule number 5, which is the sandwich method in 2019 for you to easily create and make a speech to deliver. And now, let us proceed on how to write a speech outline. A speech outline gives structure and saves time. It can increase your confidence and help to keep your place to sound authoritative and in control. As you write your speech outline, focus on how you'll introduce yourself and the topic of your speech, the points you will cover, and the interest of your audience. The first thing that we should do in writing our speech outline is crafting your introduction. So, how to craft your introduction? First, start with the greetings. The first thing people want to know when you stand to speak is who you are. So if someone else has already introduced you, take time to thank them as well as anyone who are responsible in organizing the event and the people who invite you to speak. Keep in mind that you may be nervous in starting your speech, so include that in your timeline so that you don't forget it. If there's anything about you that relates you to your audience or to the group of people who organize the event, kindly include that in your brief greetings as well, especially if you didn't have the benefit and introduction of someone else. Second, open your speech with an attention getter. You want to grab their attention and hold on their attention throughout the whole speech. When choosing your attention getter, keep your audience in mind. Think about what would grab their attention, not necessarily personally find interest or humorous. So if you're not sure that your attention getter will work, try practicing it in front of your friends or family that have similar age and interest of the person who will be your audience in delivering your speech. Third, in crafting our introduction is give your audience a reason to listen your speech. So in this part of your introduction, you'll transition from your attention getting anecdote into a subject matter of the speech itself. Briefly explain the importance or the issue you'll be discussing in your speech. If your speech is an informative one, explain them why the information is important or relevant to the audience. The fourth in crafting our introduction is present your thesis statement. Your thesis statement tells about the scope of your speech. The structure and the content of your statement will vary based on the speech you're giving. If you're giving an argumentative speech, your thesis statement is a statement of ultimate point you hope to prove through the information evidence you lay out in your speech. The thesis statement for a more informative speech will simply summarize the type of information you're going to provide to your audience through your speech. For a more scientific speech, the thesis statement will reflect on the hypothesis of the scientific study you're going to present in your speech. Fifth, in crafting your introduction is establish your credibility. You've made your point, but now you need to let the audience know why they should listen to you. Credibility doesn't necessarily to as formal as degree or years in research. It could be a personal story. If you're giving a speech in your class in school, your credibility may be as simple as the fact that you took the class and researched the topic. However, if you have a personalized interest in your topic of your speech, this is the good time that you mention that point. The last in crafting our introduction is preview your main points. Now that your audience knows what we're going to talk about, why we're going to talk about it, and why they should listen to you, give them a rich summary of points that you will make during your speech. There's no hard and fast rule, but typically, speeches have three main points. You should list them in your introduction in order you to plan and present them in your speech. The order in which you discuss your points depends on the speech you're giving. Ultimately, you want to order your points in a way that you may feel natural to you and enable you to easily transition from one point to another point. So we're halfway done. So now, let us proceed to building the body of your speech. So, as a speech writer, how to build the body of our speech. So now let us discover what are the steps in building the body of our speech. First is state your first point. The outline of the body of your speech will begin the first point you intend to make with your speech. Write your smooth transition from your introduction into the body of your speech. Your first point will be the top level entry noted by Roman numeral. Beneath the top level will be the number sub-points, which are comments, statistics, or supporting evidence of your point. depending on how your outline is formatted. These are typically letters or bullet points. Second, in building the body of your speech is present your supporting evidence or arguments. Beneath your first point, you list specific evidence or facts you want to mention in your speech that support that point. As with the points themselves, with your evidence, you typically want to start with the strongest or most important subpoints or piece of evidence and move down. Keep in mind that additional personal stories or anecdotes can be particularly effective to get your points across in a speech. Third, in building the body of your speech is transition to your next point. After you finish all the information you want to include at your first point, go back to the top level and find a smooth way to transition from that point to your second point in a sentence. Avoid overthinking your transition. It really doesn't to be incredibly sophisticated. If you can't come up with anything specific, using simple transitional phrase will work fine. The last in building the body of your speech is repeat the same process for all remaining points. Your outline will look much the same for the remaining 2 or more points you plan to cover in your speech. When choosing your subpoints or the facts that you want to emphasize your speech, keep your audience in mind as well as the overall point. Thank you for listening and watching, everyone. I hope you learn in this topic. Thank you.
So now we will continue the discussion of Miss Marineth Malinao about on how to write a speech. So in this part, we will discuss the third part, which is creating your closing. So in creating your closing, we have 6 steps to follow. So first, we have provide a smooth transition. So now that you've finished the body of your speech, you need an effective transitional sentence that will signal to your audience that you are reaching the end of your speech. So in this transition, you don't need, or it doesn't need to be fancy, or it doesn't even need to be a whole sentence. You can just simply say, in conclusion, and then you can launch to the summary of your speech. So second, we have summarize the points you have discussed. Speech coaches often describe a speech's organization as tell them what you are going to say it. Then, tell them what you said. Start your conclusion by telling your audience what you told them in your speech. So, you don't need to go into detail here. You are just enforcing what you've already told to your audience. Just make sure that you don't introduce any new information in this part, because or so that to prevent confusions to your audience. So the next one is restate your thesis statement. This version of your thesis statement should sound more like a conclusion or an ultimate finding than the hypothesis it may have been in your introduction. So if your speech went well, it means you have fully proven your thesis statement and demonstrated its importance. This statement should relate back to the summary of your points and present a strong statement. So for brief speeches, you can even combine your summary of points with your thesis statement in a single sentence that wraps up your speech. So the fourth one is leave your audience something to remember. So to close out your speech, think of something on the same note as the attention getter you used to open your speech. It could be an anecdote or humorous restatement of the importance of the issue. So you may want to think of a way to bring the entire speech back around to that story you initially told to grab your audience attention. So if you have an argumentative or similar speech, your closing lines typically will include a call to action. Give your audience an example of how important the subject of your speech is, and implore them to act on the information you gave them in a specific way. So the fifth one is thank the audience and anyone who invited you. Thanking the audience for listening to you demonstrates that you respect them and value their time. And if you were specifically invited to speak by a particular individual or an organization, you should also mention them again. And if your speech was longer, or if you went over the time allotted, be sure to tell them that you appreciate their time. So this is very familiar to us because most of our hosts in CTU Tuberan campus will do this, just like Mr. Julian Luciñara and Miss Regila Flores. So the last step in creating your closing is no time for questions. So speak with the organizers of the event beforehand and find out if you can or should invite any questions from your audience about your speech. If you intend to provide time for questions, note this on your outline so you won't forget it, or so you won't forget to mention it at the end of your speech. And if you want to establish parameters for the questions, be sure to list this in your outline so you can mention them when you announce that you are open for questions. So those are the 6 steps in creating your closing. So again, first, provide a smooth transition. Second, summarize the points you have discussed. Third, restate your thesis statement. Fourth, leave your audience something to remember. Fifth, thank the audience and anyone who invited you. The last one, or the 6th one, is no time for questions. So now we will proceed to the sample or to the illustration of the sample formal speech outline. So in the formal speech outline, it has a title of your speech, then name of the speaker, general purpose, and specific purpose. It has also a time duration. So in the sample formal speech outline, it has an introduction, body, and conclusion. So in your introduction, it has a guide question so that you can create your introduction. And in your body, you have to write all about your topic and then conclusion. So we also have a sample format for informative speech outline. So in this sample, this is the lesson that we have discussed. So as we can see, it has an introduction, body, and conclusion. And in the introduction, it has an attention device, or how can you get the attention of your audience, thesis statement, what is your speech all about, forecast of main points, what are your speaking points, and link to first point. And in the body, it has a point number 1, point 2, and so on. So in conclusion, it has also a summary of your points, restate your thesis, and clincher. So in clincher, it lies to the attention device. So this is the lesson that we have discussed. So this is all for today, and I hope you've learned something from us. Thank you and God bless.